was in the final year of my doctorates in biology, just one step away from finishing what felt like a lifetime of work. All I had left was my thesis, that one last hurdle. You'd think after all these years of grinding it out, I'd be ready to push through and get it done. But every time I sat down on campus to work on it, I just couldn't. Too many distractions, people coming and going, noise, my own procrastination. I'd stare at the screen for hours and have nothing to show for it. So I decided to remove myself from it all, get somewhere quiet, somewhere isolated, somewhere where there was nothing but me and the work. After some online searching, I found this cabin up in Northern California. It looked great, clean, secluded, and surprisingly cheap. Half the price of every other cabin I'd looked at. I figured maybe it was off-season or something. I didn't question it. I just booked it for a week and started packing. A few days later, I loaded up my car with everything I need, food, clothes, laptop, reference materials, and hit the road. The drive through the forest was peaceful. Towering trees, winding roads, the kind of quiet you don't realize you miss until you're in the middle of it. By the time I pulled up to the cabin, I already felt lighter, more focused. It looked exactly like the pictures. Part of me had expected something run down or sketchy, considering the price, but no. This place was well kept, cozy, perfect. I found the key under the mat just like the owner had instructed, and let myself in. The layout was simple. Open living room and a kitchen, one bedroom, all neatly furnished. It felt like a place someone actually cared for. I unpacked, got settled, and with a few hours before dark, I figured I'd stretch my legs. I remembered seeing a trail near the cabin as I pulled in, so I headed out for a short walk. The air was crisp, still holding on to the last warmth of the day. Birds chirped in the distance. Everything felt calm. I walked for maybe 10 minutes before I noticed something carved onto one of the trees. At first glance, it looked like some kind of symbol. Sharp, angular, almost tribal. I couldn't place it. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen in my studies. The edges were weathered, as if it had been there for decades. But something about it didn't sit right with me. The longer I stared at it, the more this unease started to spread through me. Like something deep inside was telling me to turn around. So I did. Back at the cabin, I made dinner, took a shower, and climbed into bed early. But I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, ears tuned in to every little rustle outside. I lived in cities my entire life. I was used to background noise, traffic, sirens, people. But out here, the silence was dense, alive. Eventually, exhaustion won and I drifted off. And that's when I had the dream. It was vivid in the way dreams sometimes are, when you know you're dreaming, but you can't seem to wake yourself up. It started as a series of flashes, quick, jarring images. First came that carved symbol from the tree. It felt wrong again, like it had some kind of weight to it, even in the dream. Next, a red cardinal. It was just perched outside a window, unmoving, just watching me. Then it spread its wings and flew off without a sound. Then came the image of a broken plate on the floor. No explanation, just shattered ceramic and a cold hardwood surface. And then everything shifted. The flashes stopped, and suddenly I felt like I had control again. I was sitting on the couch in the cabin, laptop open, working on my thesis. It all felt so real. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the way the firelight danced on the walls. I felt present. And that's when I heard the knock at the door. I stood up, walked over, and opened it. There, standing a few feet away, was a child, a little boy, maybe 8, 9 years old. He was just standing there in the dark, looking up at me. He reached out his hand. I remember feeling confused, concerned. What was a kid doing out here alone, in the middle of nowhere? I stepped towards him, that pit of unease returning. He said he needed help, his hand still extended. I hesitated, but I couldn't leave a child outside in the dark. I reached out and took his hand. But when I pulled, he didn't move. It was like trying to shift a statue. I turned to face him, and that's when I saw it. The boy's face was gone. Not blank exactly, just wrong. In the place of eyes, nose, and his cheeks, there was only a faint, stretched smile, wide, too wide, filled with razor-sharp teeth that glistened like glass in the moonlight. No eyes, no expression, just that mouth. And then it laughed. Not a child's laugh. This was deep, guttural, unnatural. And then it lunged at me. I shot up out of bed, drenched in sweat, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My breathing was ragged, chest tight, like someone had been sitting on it. My sheets were tangled around my legs and soaked. For a moment, I didn't even remember where I was. The room looked so unfamiliar, dim, quiet. But then it all came rushing back. The cabin, the trip, and that dream. I got up and stumbled into the bathroom. I didn't even turn on the light. I just splashed cold water on my face over and over, trying to slow everything down. I stared into the mirror, water dripping from my chin, and for a second I almost expected to see something else staring back. I've never had dreams like that. I almost never dreamed at all, really. But this one, it stuck to me. I could still see it playing out behind my eyes. That thing, that mouth, those teeth. Eventually, I went back to bed and laid down. I told myself it wasn't real. Just stress, exhaustion, the new environment. I just needed rest. But even with my eyes closed, that dream wouldn't leave me alone. I kept replaying it in my head until finally I passed out from sheer mental fatigue. The next morning came like it always does, bright, quiet. The kind of day that would normally feel peaceful. But that's when I remembered the dream. But this time, I couldn't remember anything about it, just that it was terrible. Something inside me still churned at the thought of it, but all the details were gone. I tried to recall them, tried hard, but nothing came, only that lingering feeling of dread. I figured maybe it was for the best that I forgot. So I pushed past it and got to work. I set up my laptop in the living room, laid out all my materials, and dove into my thesis. For the first time in weeks, I actually made progress. Paragraph after paragraph started coming together. It felt clear, focused. Whatever that dream had been, it was gone now. A few hours later, I needed a break. My legs were stiff, my back sore. I got up and walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water. As I stood there drinking, I noticed something in the window. A bird, bright red, just sitting on the branch right outside. A cardinal. It was beautiful, the vibrant red feathers, the way it sat so still. But something about it felt off, familiar in a way I couldn't quite explain. Not just familiar, but known. Like I had seen this exact moment before. That strange wave of deja vu washed over me so hard I felt dizzy. I couldn't look away. The bird took off, disappearing into the trees. I stood there for a moment longer before shaking it off and returning to my work. More hours passed. I was deep in writing when my stomach growled loud enough to snap me out of it. I hadn't eaten all day. I went into the kitchen and made myself something to eat. When it was ready, I reached into the cabinet for a plate. As I pulled it out, it slipped from my hand. It hit the floor and shattered. The sound froze me. I stared down at the broken plate, heart thudding again. And then it hit me. That same crushing wave of deja vu. Just like the bird. Just like something else. Something was wrong. I didn't believe in this kind of thing. I believed in science and structure and reality. But this didn't feel like coincidence. I'd seen this. Lived it already somehow. I forced myself to push it aside. Picked up the shards, threw them away, ate my food without really tasting it. And then I sat back down in the living room to finish the day strong. And that's when I heard the knock. It was soft at first, just one knock. I glanced at the clock, 10:12 p.m. Who in the world would be knocking out here this late? I froze listening. Then another knock, louder this time. I stood and walked slowly towards the front window, the hairs on my arms standing up. I pulled the curtain aside and looked out. My heart dropped. It was a boy, a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, just standing beyond the porch. I rushed to the door and flung it open. The boy didn't move. He just stood there staring at me. Then he raised his hand and said he needed help. And then, there it was, that feeling. The strongest wave of deja vu I'd ever experienced. My knees nearly buckled from it. My brain screamed, "This has already happened." Then it hit me. All of it. The dream, the bird, the plate, the monster. This wasn't just deja vu. It hadn't been a dream at all. It was a warning. I stared at the boy, whose hand still hung in the air. I could barely breathe. My mind was racing, telling me to back away. I took a step back and said I knew what he was. I wasn't helping him. His hand slowly dropped to his side. We just looked at each other for a moment. Then he lunged. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and backed away so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. I kept my eyes on the door. My breath came in sharp bursts. And then I heard it. Footsteps, circling the cabin, fast. Scratching sounds against the wood. Then came the voice. "Help me," it said. It was the boy's voice, but it wasn't his. Something was wrong with it, stretched, echoed. And then it called out again, "Help me," but deeper now. Something dark had crawled into that voice. Something that didn't belong in this world. I backed into a corner trembling, pressing myself into the wall like it could swallow me whole. It called again, "Help me," and again, and again, and then nothing. Silence. I stayed in that corner for the rest of the night, barely blinking, barely breathing. I waited for the sun like it was the only thing keeping me alive. When morning finally came and the light poured in through the windows, I forced myself to move. My legs were stiff, my head was pounding, but I had to see. I crept to the window and looked outside. Nothing. No boy, no footprints, no sign of anything had happened. I didn't care. I packed everything up in less than 10 minutes. I didn't even bother folding anything. I just threw it into the car. But before I left, I stopped just outside the front door. Right there on the ground, where the boy had stood, was the symbol. The same carved, ancient-looking thing I'd seen on the tree. Only now, it was drawn into the dirt, fresh, like someone had made it during the night. I didn't even breathe. I got in the car and left. I've tried to figure it out. I've looked into symbols, legends, folklore, anything that might explain what happened out there. But nothing I found matched. There's no record of anything like what I saw. And I still don't know how I saw it before it happened. Maybe something was trying to warn me. Maybe it was luck. Whatever it was, I know one thing for sure. If I hadn't had that dream, I wouldn't be here right now.